of God who grants grace through Jesus Christ by the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen. As you just heard, and as you already know, Caesar Augustus, the Emperor Augustus, got a notion. The kind of notion that you and I sometimes get to organize the world. While you and I just imagine trying to do that, Caesar has just enough power to think that maybe he just might be able to pull it off. Might actually be able to do it. The Gospel of Luke tells us that Caesar decreed that all the world, or at least that part of the world ruled by Rome, had to be registered for the census. It arose from the obvious need to make sure that he was getting all the taxes that they were due from all the countries that they had conquered, to make sure that the empire could run smoothly and that they could keep their thumb on everybody that they'd conquered. If everybody would just report to their town of origin and pay up, then everything can continue to run as it should. Now, we know that we can't get the whole world organized to our liking, but at least we think there are times when we could at least get our own lives pretty well lined up, organized. We could get everything in our lives, maybe not the whole world, but maybe in our lives we could get everything lined up the way it's supposed to be. The problem seems to be that no matter how hard we try to do that, and that's even what Caesar finds out over time, that we are seldom really in anything like control of our lives and the direction that our lives sometimes take. Even as powerful as Caesar was, he couldn't have suspected that as he worked to continue to tighten his grip very, very well on all of the Roman Empire, the birth of an infant boy in a little backwater Judean town called Bethlehem would one day grow up to challenge the power of all kingdoms and empires. Even a Caesar can't rule something like that out of possibility. And certainly the shepherds that we hear about tonight, as they were huddled with their flocks that night on the hills outside Bethlehem, didn't expect anything out of the ordinary to occur. Very few things out of the ordinary occurred on the hilltop with the sheep late at night. But then the mundane routine of it all was broken. The night sky was shattered by heavenly messengers bringing incredible news of the birth of the Messiah, the long-awaited Messiah. Isn't that just the way it always is? Just like those shepherds, we get sucked into the rhythms and the routines and the habits and just the regular run of the days, our habits and rhythms that we depend upon so much from day to day. And we begin to imagine that we know what life holds for us. We know what to expect. We know what tomorrow's going to bring, the day after that, the day after that. We know how it all is going to play out. We think we know what's going to happen next. But even the shepherds that night didn't know what was going to happen next. And neither do we many times. We know it all too well. I'm afraid we're going to have to let you go. The hospital just called, and the test results are back. Congratulations, you're a grandmother. I want a divorce. Your son has just been injured in a terrible accident. I'm pregnant. We could come up with an endless list. We imagine that our lives are under something like control, predictable, kind of boring even sometimes. But you know as well as I that any number of thunderbolts can strike suddenly and change everything in a heartbeat. Everything in the span of a heartbeat can be changed utterly, sometimes for great good, sometimes for other. The next moment might give way to great joy. It might give way to great sorrow. The night's darkness might break into great light, or the ground beneath us might suddenly give way, and we don't know how far the drop is going to be. Whether the news that comes to us in those sudden moments is welcome or not, part of what we realize, at least subconsciously, is that life as we've known it and assumed it would continue to be is over. And it's not going to be the same as it has been. You can laugh, you can cry, you can jump for joy, you can double over in grief. But the message you and I receive in those moments is the same message that was given to the shepherds on the hillside that night. Don't be afraid. Whatever it is, don't be afraid. Now, our first response as humans, when something new comes suddenly into our lives, is to be afraid. Certainly, if we were being held in the night by a band of heavenly angels, our first response would be to kind of draw back in fear and wonder what's going on, make sure it's safe. But what the angels want us to trust is that no matter what occurs to us in life, no matter what comes our way, we don't have to be afraid, whatever it is. Because whether it's something wonderful or something tragic, God is with us in it. And it's hard for us to know or even to imagine how God is at work in it. Even the great ones, the horrible ones. It's hard to know what God is doing in the midst of what suddenly rushed into our lives. There's a preacher named Fred Craddock who tells a story of his sister, Frida, who was dying of cancer. They reached a time when all the treatments had ended, and there was nothing left for them to do, no other treatments to try, just to let the disease and nature take its course. But the sister decided that she wasn't simply going to wait for the day to arrive. So she decided, she had her husband collect everything in the house that she had ever received in her lifetime that she had gotten as a gift from someone. She had her husband label each of the gifts with the name of the giver and with the occasion that had warranted the gift. And then she asked her husband to call each of those persons and asked him to call and make some kind of appointment or some kind of a time to receive the gift back. She's going to give all the gifts back that she had received. Some of those gifts had been given decades, several decades earlier. Well, this was all very embarrassing to her brother Fred, Craddock, the preacher. It seemed to him enormously tacky. An affront to the way things are supposed to be done, at least in their family, the Southern family. This is just not the way things were done. It's embarrassing. You don't return gifts. And so one day he was going to visit his sister, see how things were going, and as he was walking up the sidewalk, a woman was coming out of the house that he knew. She was holding a vase that she had given his sister many, many years before, and he was embarrassed all over again, and so he began to apologize. "Oh, please forgive my sister. I hope you understand. She's very ill. We were raised to treasure gifts in our family, to treat them well. So I hope you won't think badly of Frida or of her background, because it's really not the kind of people we are." But the woman wouldn't have it. She said, "Oh, Fred, you don't get it. This is the most wonderful gift that I've ever received in my life. For 25 years, Frida has looked on this vase that I gave her so long ago, and she has thought of me whenever she has seen that. And now that vase is going to go into my house, and it's going to remind me of Frida for the remainder of my days. It is a twice blessed gift that I will always treasure." And her response kind of shamed Fred, because he'd seen it very differently than that. He'd kind of let his own pride get involved in his sister's story. But he realized that his sister had looked death directly in the eye, and she saw its approach not simply as a call to shrink into the corners and to hide and to be afraid, but as an opportunity to bless others. People who had blessed her earlier in her life, she was now in a position where she could bless them. She didn't simply dissolve into fear with nothing to do, helpless and powerless. When our lives reach a dead end of one kind or another, and life as we've known it is not going to continue, be some kind of a required detour that's going to take us off the path we thought that we were guaranteed and we could count on, our first response is often to be afraid. Oh, what are we going to do? How's this going to play out? I can't handle this. This is more than I can deal with. But remember what we're about on this night, more than any other occasion in our faith. God comes among us in Jesus Christ to assure us that no matter what arises in life, no matter what arises in life, even if it's death itself, we need not be afraid. No matter how deep the darkness may seem, or now, no matter how deep the darkness may actually be, it cannot overwhelm the light. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.